Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Rathel, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 is roll call. Mr. Moran is here. Mr. Rathel.
Here.
Mr. Van Oz.
Here.
Mr. Tenova. Mr. Mans.
Here.
Mr. Falboom. Mr. Filarski. Item number 3 is any additions or deletions to the agenda.
Move as submitted.
Motion by Mr. Rathel. Support by Mr. Falboum to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 19th, 2018.
Approved. Support.
Supported by Mr. Falboum. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 5 is our financial report for March 2018. Everyone should have their financial report in front of them. And our revenue budgeted for the year is $795,718. Our year-to-date revenue is $821,611, and that is 103% of our budgeted amount. We are ending our fiscal year as of the end of March, and our expenditures for the year are budgeted at $795,718. Our year-to-date expenditures are $792,841, which is just under 100% of our budgeted amount. Our capital reserves as of March 31st, 2018 is $646,650, and our past due rent as of April 11th, 2018 is $6,911, and our pending legal action slash settlement plan is $10,108. Mike, anything you want to point out on the financial report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a note here to an end. So I want to congratulate the Commission on another balanced budget year for the airport and the Commerce Park. We did, per our last meeting, I was able to barely squeak in the purchase of our new airport vehicle on this budget year and still be balanced. So you'll see there on your left-hand side, we did note the 2 things, the new Ford vehicle purchase. We also got 1 load of fuel in right there at the end of the fiscal year for $16,000. That was 100 low lead. You can see our current inventories below that. So we did balance even with the purchase of the new vehicle and the other expenses. Other than that, everything else I think tracked along pretty well for the fiscal year.
Mr. Rathel.
I would just like to congratulate our airport manager for really all year long keeping an eye on this budget. Mike, regularly, almost every day, certainly he looks at the financials of the airport. He's constantly monitoring the revenues and making sure that he's very conservative on his expenses. Even items that may be budgeted, he justifies those to the point where he looked at where we were with our revenues and our expenses, and then came in with the 2 purchases in March for the Ford truck, and then also the fuel farm to bring us in on that balanced budget of expenditures with revenue at that point. But it was 2 things that we needed, and it fit perfect in our budget, and that just shows how Mike really professionally manages this facility financially, and I just want to thank you, Mike, for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the financial report? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to receive and file. Motion by Mr. Mann, supported by Mr. Tenova to receive and file the March 2018 financial report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 6 is the manager's report. Item 6A is the EPA facility update. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to make the Commission aware, I believe I briefed some of you that we do have confirmed word from the EPA that they will be vacating their facility here on Grohl Road, which is not obviously owned by the township, but it is kind of part of our airport community here. So this is obviously something that we've got some concern with on what's going to happen with the facility. It's my understanding at this time they were looking to move out in the next couple months. I have a non-written but a verbal update that's been pushed back till August. I'm trying to confirm that right now. Our understanding is that the process, once they vacate the premise, it'll get transferred to GSA and go through the normal route. It's not clear yet. They'll offer it to other federal entities, state, county, local, us, and then if nobody bids on it at that time, it will go to auction. They normally have reserve prices on that, but again, it will go to auction for the public, so you get what you get on that bidding. A few commissioners and myself were able to do a brief tour of some of the facility. It's still in EPA's hands, so I'm trying to get some kind of drawings and schematics for us to look at and start having some discussions in terms of planning and see if it's something if the commission's interested in. Just from the quick inventory we took, I think it's going to be tough for the Airport or Commerce Park to develop anything with that, but there is some potential there. So I'll keep the commission updated as things come out, but just wanted you to be aware that that is coming down the pipeline.
Mike, is there any idea what kind of shape the HVAC system and the building is in?
I'd say the building overall, the systems are in great condition, good to great condition. The facility itself, the overall feel of it, I mean, it's in fair condition, and some areas are dated, the flooring, the bathrooms, things like that. But in terms of the mechanical systems, they've done a lot of updating and invested a lot of money into those HVAC systems and things like that. They do also, in the interior of that building, have a lot of chem labs, hoods, ventilation, that kind of setup. And they also have the 3 surrounding outbuildings, the original hangar that was on the field to the south. I would rate that in very poor condition. The 2 garages that are on the west side, I would say are in good condition and definitely usable.
Well, I would consider the building to be in excellent condition.
Mm-hmm.
It's dated, but all the money needed to keep it going as efficient as that building could be, they've put in. So from a standpoint of the structure of the building, the HVAC, all the mechanical, it's in excellent condition. The problem is that it's formatted to basically be offices. And I think there was like 28 offices, or was there more than that, Mike?
Probably somewhere in that ballpark.
And the way that it's configured now, there's very limited use of what that building could be used for. Interesting enough, that building, if people don't know, was a parts depot. That's where the Navy kept all their parts, and they had a spray booth over there. So all the offices that are there now are just basically stud walls that were put up within a warehouse. So if need be, that facility all offices could be taken out, but obviously that costs money, and then the build out after that would be, expensive for whatever you're going to use it for. I feel that this potentially could be a big issue for us, and when Ted and I and Mike went over there and we met, if that building is vacated, which I'm not 100% sure that it will be, I'm kind of hoping that the EPA stays there. They've already pushed it back once. The decision was made to leave it before the budget was approved, the federal budget. So I think they were pleasantly surprised with their budget that EPA received in the federal budget. So there may not be the pressure. I'm hoping. I have no reason to believe that I'm correct in that, but the best thing for us is that building stays occupied by the EPA. If it doesn't, we have a major problem on our hands. And since we don't control the building, we don't own the building, we could only hope that it goes into somebody that's going to maintain it the way that we would like it maintained to enhance the airport. With saying all that, I would like Mike and Ron and Ted to form a committee with Ryan Loftus and a couple other people in the community to kind of collectively meet to plan what we're going to do with that. If it becomes available, would we as a township want it, go after it with the airport? What can we do? But I don't want the airport commission to be straddled with the option of either taking it, having to spend money on it in hopes to generate revenue, or watch it go into a state of decay and we can't do anything about it. And that's the first building that you see when you come down to Grove Road and enter the air park. So it can be something that would be a benefit potentially, but I think we have more of a potential of it becoming kind of more of an issue for this area. And I want to make sure that we as a community, not just the Commerce Park Commission, but the community get out in front of this to come up with some ideas, get some community members involved, do something to say, hey, if this does become available, this is our plan.
Mike, how many square feet is the building?
Roughly, I want to say similar size to Township Hall, like around 30,000. It's 2 floors, and the offices are around the entire perimeter, exterior perimeter of both floors. The interior of the facilities are mainly conference rooms, bathrooms, testing labs, things of that nature, but the entire outside wall are where all the offices are located.
And how long has the EPA been in there?
Since 1969.
The Navy left, yeah. They claim that property. It may have been under a different name, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, EPA has been in that facility since the Navy left. The way that when the airport was deeded over to the township, when they handed to the GSA, again, they go down that string to any federal entities, state entities, county, and then township, local entities want it. And the feds were first in line, so the EPA had come in and said, we want these buildings in this plot of land, and that's what they took. State and county passed, and then the township took, the remainder being the airport and the Commerce Park.
Anyone else have any comments?
I'd just like to add to what John said. I like the building. I thought the building was pretty nice, but I see a real disaster coming down the road if they dump this property on Grove Seal without adequate, to the point where I think a building of that age, we might want to negotiate getting the whole facility raised before they leave or before they turn it over and just give us a vacant lot that we could build something new on or enhance rather than because I'm not sure the building right now is in great shape. If EPA leaves and the government takes 3 years to dispose of that property, it's going to be a piece of garbage. If that thing is left just to sit there for 3 years, you're not even going to want to go in there. So I think John's got a good point that we need to put pressure on them with a committee, both with this commission and with the township, and keep pressure on them right along to do something with that building before it comes back to us 3 years down the road and it's not salvageable. I'd rather see the building tore down. The building is old. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That building's been around there for 50 years. So, but right now it's in great shape.
If we don't communicate the importance of that facility staying maintained, then like Ted said, it'll be evacuated. They'll go through their process of trying to find somebody. There's not going to be anybody, certainly that me or anyone that I've talked to so far said, well, it'd be a great fit for this government agency to come in and take it right away. So it would just sit. And it is a building that, because it's so old, it's like going in a time warp. I mean, it's like crazy. Literally, it was the way that it was back when the Navy was here. The floors are all original, and they look as polished as these. I mean, it's amazing how well they keep up everything. But that is visually, even from the standpoint of the airfield, certainly Grove Road, it's right in the middle of everything. And we just can't afford to let that go, into a state of disrepair, and who knows what happened if, with the grass and the trees and all the landscaping, would that fall on us again, not for the fact that we would be responsible for it, but other than we'd want to keep it up instead of having, that get out of control. So I really do believe, and I've been saying this, I mentioned to someone else, we need to have a couple people on this commission. We've got to get with some of the township people. Ted can direct that. I've already talked to Duncan and Joe, just to let everyone know how important this facility is going to be, not just to us, but for the community. We've never had to think about this before, ever, in the history of the township owning this airport. That building has always been taken care of, and now it's in danger of not.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, Mike will move on to the next item, which is item 6B, which is a runway 0422 project update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief update here. We had a small punch list of items that Dan's Excavating completed last week. That closes out the final punch list again. The only item remaining on there is we're still having difficulties with our PAPIs, our precision approach lighting, off of the runway 4 end. We're trying to work with the FAA on that. We've had several flight checks and still don't be able to pass them. The engineer and I are wondering if it's an FAA issue at this point. We're going to, on the engineer's part, they're going to conduct a survey. Actually, they're coming out tomorrow. There's a dispute between, we have to be clear so many degrees off of the lights that are on that end of the runway, and I believe the number was 7 degrees, and the FAA is saying we're not, the engineer is saying we are, so we're going to get a survey done and present that to them and see if that appeases it or not. We're in discussions with the manufacturer that's made the modifications to the box to deflect the light for us, and all their specs, they've come out and reviewed that, and they say all their specs are correct. So there's a lot of questions there, but that's really the only loose end left from the project. So we filed the paperwork to do the final closeout for the punch list and the remaining items there, with the PAPI still being open-ended. We're hoping to resolve that here in the next, I would hope in the next few weeks, but maybe another month.
Any questions for Mike? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6C, which is the tree removal.
Just wanted to make the board aware I'm working on, there's a tree along the west side of the airport here that's along the canal. We've had some resident complaints and concerns, and then I went down and looked at it last week. This is a tree that's right on the canal. It grows out of the embankment, and it's right off of Chatham Road there. And the issue as you can see, it's a very large tree. But as on the other side of the airport, the beavers have seemed to have made their way up the canal here, and they've chewed on the roots. They've torn all the bark off the base of the tree and actually chewed through the 2 major roots on the backside. And that tree's tall enough where if it were to fall, it would definitely cover the entire canal and probably hit the dock on the other side. So it is on our property. There's a lot of resident concerns there. I had a contractor that the township uses for a lot of their tree removal come out today and quote $2,200 basically to drop the tree in place. They would trim up the branches and then cut off a couple of the bulk logs and just drop them into the woods there. So I'll be looking at doing that probably in the next week or two. He's very busy right now, obviously, with the storms we've been having over the last couple of weeks, but wanted the commission to be aware of the expense. Again, I think keep our community surrounding us happy, I wouldn't want that to fall across and damage anyone else's property. So it's a difficult location to get into. I mean, it's off our runway, and we have a 10-foot fence that runs behind that. We may have to take a section of the fence out and put some wood down to get a bucket truck or some other equipment back there. It's hard access. There is kind of a 2-track, but it's grass, it's not gravel between the fence. But the access to that is also pretty tight. So it's in a tough location, and it's in a very awkward position, but I do think that price is not terrible to take down a tree of that size. So,
How much?
$2,200. 2,200.
Mike, it's kind of hard to tell from the picture. How tall is that tree?
If I had to guess, I'd say maybe somewhere around 50, 60 feet. I don't know how wide that canal is, but it looks like it'd be pretty close to going across it. It may be taller. And again, you can see the base there's the beavers have chewed right through this main root, and then the one back here on the backside, and all the bark is stripped off. And the resident had told me when the water level is lower, you could see underneath the tree there that they had been chewing on it.
Are they damming any place along
We
there?
do have issues with them on the east side of the airport. There's an inlet there, and we have a large concrete culvert that runs between the river and the inlet. They've dammed that up once or twice. We've cleared it out. If we get a big windstorm out of the south, sometimes it'll blow whatever contaminants in there out. Right now, it's starting to get dammed up again. I may look at having some kind of a grate fabricated in there to prevent it, but it's always an ongoing battle with those. So no other damage like that. I mean, we've had them drop one tree on a observation deck that the Nature and Land Conservancy had, but nothing substantial there. But they've definitely shown their faces again in the downriver area over the last probably 3 or 4 years. Didn't seem like we had them for a while, but they're back.
Any questions for Mike on the tree removal?
Hey, Mike, have you ever done any shoreline maintenance at all on that east side of Frenchman's Creek?
We'll go in once in a while. I mean, we check the outfalls regularly in Frenchman's Creek from the airport outfalls that dump into there. We've added some stone, maybe, I want to say 2 years ago, to one of the outlets where it had kind of washed out a little bit, excuse me. But in terms of trimming and doing any of the riprap control over there, no. I mean, we'll maintain our 2-track, but we've never done any maintenance along that shoreline.
And have you inventoried other trees or anything else along the creek there?
No, I mean, other than a visual walk, which we did last week. There's similar height trees that are down there, but none of them grow out of the embankment and lean over the canal like that. I think they'd be easier to drop if we had a beaver issue like that. This is really the only tree that I recall on that embankment where it's leaning out over the canal. But we could do an inventory if you'd like one. I can look at that. I mean, there's a lot of weeds and riprap that grow up along that shoreline.
Anything else for Mike on the tree removal? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6D, which is the Coleman A. Young Airport.
Just wanted to make a quick comment on this. It's something we'll be tracking. There's been a lot of news lately, if the commission has or has not seen. There's the mayor and other entities in Detroit that are looking at potentially closing Coleman A. Young Airport in obviously in the city. And I think there's a political battle going on there between the city council and other entities within that. So obviously they did a study. I met with a consultant that was doing the study at that time. He was trying to get some comparatives in the area. But just want to make a note that is coming down the pipeline, that it's a potential. So we'll be kind of monitoring that, because we're really, in my mind, in terms of general aviation airports, probably the next closest to the city for smaller aircraft, jets, things like that. We'll probably go to Willow Run or Pontiac, but it's a potential for us to pick up tenants and traffic if it were to close. So that's definitely something we'll monitor. And I was mentioning to Commissioner Manns, I've reached out to a few of the business entities that were interested in investing in City Airport and have been turned down. So if nothing else, it's good for some leads for us, but we'll continue to track that.
Mike, in the Detroit News this weekend, there was an article saying it was closing.
Right.
They weren't going to fund the terminal, and for all intents and purposes, and the FBO is putting up quite a battle to maintain it, but it kind of looks like that thing's on its way out.
Correct. And I know the big discrepancy is always what they're going to do with their grant obligations. That's always the big question with airports when they want to close it. I don't recall the exact dollar amount, but it was several $1 million that was owed still to the FAA, so I think that's what they're considering right now. But correct, the city council and the mayor's office have put a freeze on any business negotiations or new development on the airport until they get this resolved. So it's pretty much put the airport at a standstill. I mean, the operations continue, but no new development or business can take place.
In the article, they'd indicated that leases are only month to month, so doesn't give you much to plan when you can only rely on a lease being month to month. Okay. Okay, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item number 7 is our action items. The item number 7A is the Selena Burkhart Hangar 2 Martial Art Studio lease. And we have a resolution in front of us that reads, based upon the recommendation from the Groseal Airport Commerce Park manager, the Groseal Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby approves a lease between the Groseal Martial Arts Academy and the Groseal Municipal Airport. Formal lease will be developed pending approval by the Commission. Terms of the proposed lease agreement are listed in the history, purpose, and explanation section of this resolution. And that indicates there will be a 1-year lease with no options for a cost of $300 a month or $3,600 a year.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Van Oz. Supported by Mr. Falboom. Mike, anything you want to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few notes. We approved a single office lease for the same tenant in last month's meeting. She has her attorney practice in the office just down the hall there. The Martial Arts Academy that was operating on Macomb Street is closed, and I think they're looking to take up some of the slack. So this is one of the old dance studio suites that we have. So you can see in the pictures there's some damage from the dance studio had glued mirrors onto the walls in the room and then ripped them off on their way out. So there's some damage to the walls, and the carpet has some staining in it. The tenant stated they were very eager to get into the unit. I think they may have already booked some classes and things like that. So that's why the rush to get in on May 1st. We were looking at redoing some drywall in there and putting new carpet in. They're in such a hurry that they had asked they'll rent them a carpet cleaner themselves, clean the carpet, and then they have some decorations and wall coverings that can go over the damage. So they're okay with that for now, and we can look at negotiate some of the upgrades later down the road, but those aren't part of the lease deal. They're taking it as is right now. You can see that on the picture of the suite on the your third page on that action item. So with the current condition of that office, we did lower. Normally for these suites, we're charging $12 to $13 a square foot. It's at $11. So I think normally we were at like $338 a month, and we dropped it down to like an even $300.
Mike, in the history it says that the total area is 324 square feet, and on the drawing it says 312. Do you know which one of those is right?
I believe it's the 324, and the drawing I had was a dated one. We remeasured because there were some dividing walls that were originally in that the dance studio removed when they took over.
Any other comments or questions on the resolution? Mr. Folbaum.
It says utilities are included. What is this all under one HVAC unit?
Correct. Yep. So Hangar 2 has 2 gas meters and 1 electric meter in it. North and south are split for gas, but there's 1 electric on the north. That's why you see that price per square foot's elevated to accommodate for that.
So I have a comment. So we have the square footage. I know that was wrong at 312, but the monthly rate was correct at $338. You're proposing that space now to be leased out at $300 a month. And the reason I used to lower the rate on that space was because of the condition of the unit. However, I don't see really anything that they plan on doing to make the unit any better. Basically, the rent savings to reinvest back into the unit, because all you're doing really is cleaning a carpet with a carpet cleaner and putting posters over the wall where the mirrors were at. There wasn't any repair to that.
Right.
So really, isn't the idea of reducing the rent in a unit that isn't up to maybe standard, that they would reinvest that money, the savings back into it to make the unit nicer.
Would
Well,
be nice.
the other way you could
but-
look at it is we're not spending any money to fix up
Correct.
the unit to repair it. So
Yep.
it's not, they're taking it as is. So there's a discount because we're not spending our money to fix it up.
Correct.
But they're not spending their money to fix it up either.
That's true.
So if the unit was being fixed up, I would agree with that. So I wouldn't say that the unit is any worse off now as it was before. There was mirrors on the wall. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not really in favor of reducing rent. I don't see a real reason why to do that.
I would disagree that it's not in a worse condition. If, there's mirrors on the wall, at least it's improved. Once the mirrors come down, it doesn't look the same. It looks in disrepair.
But where does the snowball end? We allowed the tenant to go in and destroy it. We didn't get any money. We actually had a tenant leave owing us money, and now
Know the
we're gonna-
history.
So we just keep going lower and lower and lower. So, and we can always use the same old excuse while we give everybody a deal here because, well, it's not that good. You know what? Well, it's better than nothing. And I've never subscribed to that. It's a dangerous, slippery slope. We haven't done this in a long time. And now we have a tenant that has their office down the hall, and she'd like to have a little business. And I don't see the need that we actually discount something unless this tenant was going to say, you know what, I'll take half of my discounted money, I'll put something up there, I'll paint the walls, I'll get some, plaster and spackle it up there and then paint it to get rid of it, but do something other than put posters on it. We're just lowering our rent for no benefit to the airport. Is my feeling, and I don't prescribe to that philosophy.
Any other comments?
For a one-year lease, I agree with Ron. I would agree, John, in another circumstance, but just being a one-year lease. That's my talent. For a longer lease, I'd be right there with you.
You know what? We don't have a history with this tenant, okay, or the business, or experience. Well, we do have experience with the tenant, okay. That this is going to succeed any longer than a year. So what happens, what happens after a year? Is the facility going to be in less shape than it is, worse shape than it is now? Absolutely. Someone's going to be using it for a year. They're going to be kicking in there and karate chopping and everything. So when do we say?
How about we get a $380 security deposit?
I think we got to do something. I mean, the idea of just saying, you know what, don't worry about it. We'll just lower the rent. If you put some posters up.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a few comments, this tenant did offer. I had looked at trying to get the office revamped in their time frame, and I will tell you that I got a quote for over $5,000 to do the carpet and the drywall work in there, which on that office, that's an ROI of 2 years of rent.
It was even more than that.
It was
wasn't
higher than
Mike, what you and I
$5,000.
talked about? Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that estimate was very high to meet their timeline because it was such short notice. I think we could find a much more conservative one. But looking at that, the tenant offered to do the work themselves. I wasn't comfortable with that because they're not a licensed contractor. I would be comfortable with, we've allowed tenants to paint offices in that facility and things like that, but drywall work and redoing carpet and things is not something I'd like an amateur to do in one of our facilities. I want to make sure they're licensed contractors. So it was really just an issue of their timeline and trying to meet that with the classes and stuff, and that's just the way the negotiations went. That that suite has been vacant since the dance studio left. So I just felt that getting a tenant in there at that price for a one-year lease was acceptable at this time. Now, I do think if we do a substantial improvement like that,
Hey, don't get me wrong, it's a
Yep.
philosophy.
understood.
For a long time, the philosophy around here was, you know what, something is better than nothing, all right? However, when we changed that attitude and we started to charge people more rent, okay, based upon the benefit of them being here, then we started to have money in the bank and better tenants and a facility that we're proud of. These are not easy decisions. I get it. But you know what? When we look at a tenant that has an office already there, they want to start a brand-new business, all right? Then what we do is we go after the highest possible rent that we can get for our facility. No different than the boat storage lot that you're going to come and you're going to say, you know what, we're going to jack that rate up. Why are you going to do that, Mike? It's all dumpy. Well, you know what? We can get more, right? Somebody's going to want that. Somebody wants this. We have facilities that are vacant that one day somebody's going to want. And if we go into every one of our negotiations with something's better than nothing, we always come out at the lower end. I don't like the philosophy. I've never liked the philosophy. And what we're doing is we're taking our standard rate of what we've been charging and what we want to get for our square footage of that building, and we lowered it.
Well, I disagree though, because you're not getting a white box with that building. I mean, look at it. We're not, I haven't been in there since she left. And if it hasn't changed in how many years is that, 4?
Going on 4 years.
4 years. I mean, it's not, I would negotiate a lower lease on that building.
I know you would, absolutely you would, exactly. And every building that doesn't have anybody in it, okay, the longer,
Yeah.
with that philosophy, the lease and the square footage rent goes down and down and down, because when no one's been there for...
I'd rather see a full unit than an empty unit. That's my philosophy.
Right, and we have people there. We've got another proposal we're going to talk about, an FBO that's going to need space. We have opportunities to do and grow. We always have. People come and go. It's not like it's a facility that's in the back of the Commerce Park that we never get anybody to rent from us. That's just my point. So I don't. You guys know how I feel.
Any other comments, questions?
I just have one question.
Mr. Folbaum?
I can't make sense of the math. If we've,
It's not exactly $11 a square foot. I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. Apologize about that. 300 is just the number we landed on for the 338.
so does the $3,600 include the 1 month free rent?
No, we would just start it 1 month after.
So really it's an 11 month.
It'd still be a 12-month lease.
$3,300.
It's just a
But
1 month.
it's $3,300 then for
Correct.
the year.
Yeah, because we got to give 1 month for free. No one's been in that facility.
And you said it's 324 or 312, or you're not sure?
That I'm not sure. I'm getting jumbled up now.
He originally said 324.
I believe it's
Well, if it's
324.
at 324, that really works out to 1018 a foot after the month's free rent. And you said we'd be normally at 13?
Correct. 12 to 13. The bigger units, we normally do 12. The smaller offices that are like 100 square foot, we're at 13.
Plus 13. It's not
Well-
going to be now, it's going to be 11, and then
Well,
it's going to be 10.
No projects go right to 5.
So it's sort of 5.
It's not screw around, let's just go right down to
well,
5.
but I want to get this clear. Are we at 11 or are we at 1018? That's almost $1 difference.
Well, he's saying with it's still gonna. I'm gonna make it a 12-month lease. The first month, they're gonna get a free month, and then it'll be 12-month payment, right? So you're gonna get the 3,600, but there's gonna be 1 month up front.
It's 13 months.
So it's
for the price of
13
12,
months.
So it's 11, but if you
Correct.
count it, then it's
Okay.
1018.
Right.
Okay.
So basically what you're saying, it's 1018,
Okay.
which is, it's a 10. However, we won't get into, the tenant, but, come on, guys.
Okay. We got your point, John.
I can see it.
Really, that's where we're at. We're just like, something's better than nothing.
We have a motion by Mr. Van Oz, supported by Mr. Falboom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries. Let the record reflect that Mr. Rathel voted no.
Yes, in the minutes too, Mike. Date it and keep it on your desk.
Item number 7B is another action item for Bidiger. Is that how you pronounce that, Mike?
Correct, yep.
Bidiger temporary lot lease, based upon the recommendation from the Groseal Airport Commerce Park manager. The Groseal Airport Commerce Park Commission hereby approves a lease between Bidiger Contractors, Inc. and the Groseal Municipal Airport. Formal lease will be developed pending approval by the Commission. Terms of the proposed lease agreement are listed in the history, purpose, and explanation section of the resolution. And this is for a 17-month lease? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah,
It's
April to September.
Okay, just from April 20th to September 30th, for a rental fee of $3,000.
$3,000. That's what we're getting for that little office. That's got to be way too much. It's
So moved.
on that land.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Van Oz, supported by Mr. Falboom. Mike, anything you want to point out?
No, just, a few notes. This is part of the West River Road water main and road resurfacing project that the township is doing. Just like the previous water main project, the contractor needs a staging area. So they'll put up a temporary fence. This is actually just going to be for storage, equipment storage pipe, that kind of thing. If you recall the previous project, they actually dug a hole into the field and used it as a decanting area. So they would haul the sludge there, pump the water off the top, and then they would haul the muck left over off-site. That was a lot more intensive. We charged a $5,000 fee for that for a similar time frame. This is simply just lot storage, vehicles, equipment, pipe, things like that. So we negotiated a $3,000 fee for that.
In the contract, the contractor is being paid by the township to do this
Correct.
work? Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Sure.
Mr. Falboom?
We do have like their license, insurance, and everything. They're responsible if anybody breaks in.
Correct. DPW will have all that on file. And then we also have a clause in the agreement with them that has to be restored back to original. I normally collect half up front and then half when the project's over. If there's any issues on that, last time we had a little challenge at the end there was some money shuffling with DPW and the contractor and a disagreement with them, and they hadn't finished up the yard yet. We actually held the portion that they owed us plus what it would cost to restore the lot from the project. So we do have that power if needed. It all settled out and worked out in the long run with the contractor in the previous project. It's just we have that authority with the township if we need it. That's it.
Anything else? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Van Oz, supported by Mr. Falboom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 8 is our subcommittee reports. Having none tonight, we will move on to item number 9, which is a closed session for the discussion of the HBO proposal. We'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Van, supported by Mr. Rathel to go in closed session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries.